Early in September of 2022, the UK's longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, passed away after a long reign of 70 years.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
The royal family has some of the most magnificent royal properties in the world, from Buckingham Palace to Balmoral Castle. Over hundreds of years, these properties passed down by kings and queens to their descendants. With such a rich past stretching back centuries, it is no wonder that the Queen and the royal family share castles and palaces with some ghostly residents. Windsor Castle is truly haunted by a number of ghosts. The castle has made headlines in recent years for hosting royal weddings, but there may have been some spectators who weren't on the guest list. At least 4 are said to haunt various parts of Windsor Castle. King Henry VIII, famed for his 6 wives, is said to haunt the deanery cloisters where he can be heard hobbling around. Queen Elizabeth I in the library. According to the BBC, her footsteps can be heard on the bare floorboard before her striking presence appears. Charles I is said to haunt a canon's house in the castle area, and George III in the room where he was restricted during his period of madness. According to haunted castles and hotels, he can be seen looking out of the windows located below the royal library, where he was confined during the recurrence of his illness. A monastery once stood where Buckingham Palace now stands. It is said that a monk now haunts the rear terrace and can be seen wandering around in chains. Apparently, he is the ghost of a monk who died in a punishment cell at the monastery hundreds of years ago. Another ghostly presence is said to wander in a first-floor office. King Edward VII's private secretary, Major John Gwynne, who stayed in the royal residence, shot himself after being criticized for divorcing his wife. Palace staff reported that on several occasions they have heard a single gunshot sound. Hampton Court Palace in London is home to the spirit of 3 of Henry VIII's 6 wives. Jane Seymour, his 3rd wife and the mother of his only son, Edward, carries a lighted taper as she walks from the Queen's apartments. Henry's 5th wife, Catherine Howard, was beheaded for adultery in 1542 when she was 19. It is said that her ghost can be heard screaming and giving the same terror-stricken shrieks when she was arrested and ran down the hall. The most famous ghost is Henry VIII's 2nd wife, Anne Boleyn. If legends are true, Anne Boleyn's ghost must be the most travelled ghost in Britain. She is reported everywhere too, but she spends many hours walking down the corridors of Hampton Court wearing a blue or a black dress, screaming. She was beheaded by sword on the 19th of May 1536, and her headless body has been spotted gliding across the corridors of the tower. Each year on the anniversary of her execution, the 19th of May, she appears at Blickling Hall in Norfolk, her alleged birthplace. The Tower of London was a prison for noble personages down through the centuries. In the summer of 1483, Richard III sent his nephew and child princes, Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, to the Tower of London. The little boys disappeared in the tower, and many believe Richard III killed them or had them killed. In 1674, 2 children's skeletons were found buried under the tower, but then again 2 different children's skeletons were found back there in 1603. It is speculated that the young Richard escaped and became a bricklayer, but only one thing is certain: the princes definitely haunt the tower as ghosts. According to haunted places in the world, the princes have been spotted in the Bloody Tower wearing white nightgowns and holding hands. They never make a sound and can only be seen for a few fleeting moments before they fade into the stonework. The most well-known haunting at Balmoral Castle, where Queen Elizabeth and the royal family spent the summer months, is that of John Brown, who was a Scottish personal attendant and favourite of Queen Victoria. According to the haunted rooms, nowadays the ghost of John Brown can be seen walking around the castle corridors, apparently wearing his kilt. The most common seen ghost at the London-based estate is King George II, who died there in 1760. At the time of his death, he was waiting for news from his troops during the 7 Years' War. According to Crown Chronicles, he died while looking out of a window. It is said that his face sometimes appears in the window, and people have heard a voice asking, "Why don't they come?" As a tradition, the royal family spends Christmas at Sandringham. But it is said that there was a ghost that left staff afraid to work in it. The most frightening is the story of the poltergeist that haunts the halls of Sandringham, causing mayhem by sending cards flying around the room, blankets being pulled off beds, and lights going on and off by themselves. Apparently, Prince Charles is also said to have experienced a supernatural event in the mid-1980s. He was looking for some old prince with his valet Ken Stronach when they both suddenly felt very cold and felt that someone was behind them. But when they turned around, there was no one there. What do you think about these ghostly stories? Are ghosts real? Do they even exist? Are they from another world that we the living have never explored? These are questions that may or may never be answered.